Hey guys, it's Ryan Fowler. This is Inner Masculine Live. Today's episode, we have a very interesting clip. It's the author of one of the best-selling books, psychology books of all time. I think it's still rated #1 on Amazon in psychology right now. The author, Mr. Van der Kolk, he is talking about trauma, and his book is called The Body Keeps the Score. He's a psychiatrist and a neuroscientist, and he actually discusses how science has discovered that subconscious trauma is stored in your body. It can be in your brain too. It affects your brain, but there are nerves and neurons processing data throughout our body, and trauma is most often stored there. So we're going to figure out, why is that? What's that about? Also, he's going to talk about how common trauma is. And I've read studies about codependency, toxic shame, etc., that shows that about 90% of our society at least has some toxic shame. Toxic shame it's one of the big end results of trauma, of traumatic events from your childhood. And people don't even understand really what trauma is. They're really events that our brain interprets in a way, or we interpret in a way growing up, that lead us to adopt painful beliefs that have pain tied to them, emotional pain tied to them. There's actually 5 types of beliefs, and the trauma associated, say, for example, with a vehicle accident or war, whatever, that can often be, I'm not safe, or maybe a lot of domestic violence. But overall, and hi, Tim, and hi, P-Dubs, good to see you guys on. And my loyal watchers, Tim, my good buddy, P-Dubs, watching every day. I appreciate it, P-Dubs. By the way, guys, so what happened is there was daylight savings time, and I was not aware that Mexico no longer follows daylight savings times, and it kind of screwed my whole schedule up because it used to be I was on Texas time, Central time. Now I'm not. I'm an hour behind, but all of my hypnosis sections are still Central time. So I've been trying to figure out what to do with this time slot. I'm going to be doing 10:30 a.m. Central time from now on, Tuesday through Saturday. So that's what we have going on there. And so before we get into this about how common subconscious trauma is, how it messes people up, analyze this clip, I want to introduce first. I have in 2 to 4 weeks, probably closer to 4 weeks, that's just typically how it goes, but I have an ebook coming out that explains how your subconscious mind works, and it's absolutely free. So let's just check this out real quick. And you notice my tag now is Ryan. It's innermasculine.com/free ebook right here. Get on this waiting list now. Free ebook, How the Subconscious Mind Works, Why It Keeps You Stuck, a free guide. It's going to have 14 chapters. I showed those yesterday. I'll show them from time to time. But if you wonder why you have anxiety, if you wonder why you're stuck, why do you have these limiting beliefs, why do you procrastinate, why do you self-sabotage, why can't you get ahead, I'm going to explain exactly why. I'm going to give you the blueprint of your subconscious mind, how it operates, and exactly what's going on. I'm going to give you some tips to handle that too. But the number one key is hypnosis, but there's some self-talk you can do as well. And there's other methodologies, the 3 that I like, and they each have kind of their own niche, is hypnosis / self-hypnosis, EMDR, and psychedelics. I think the most flexible and useful overall is hypnosis. They'll all help. So, I'm pushing the cause to get all these new methodologies, awareness of them. But if you want to know why you're stuck, well, it's your subconscious. And this book is going to show you exactly what's going on in your subconscious. So now you have some clarity, and I'll give you some tips too, some things you can do with self-talk to help you overcome this, anxiety, procrastination, these other things, these fears that are not serving you, that are holding you back. So just go to innermasculine.com/free ebook in 2 to 4 weeks. The ebook's coming out. Put in your email and you'll get it no charge from me, my gift to you. And so Free ebook. All right, now we're going to go to this clip. And yeah, this book, Body Keeps the Score, it's sold about 2 million copies. So for a book on psychology, that's actually absolutely massive. It's a New York Times bestseller. It's been #1 book in psychology for 8 years, since 2015. So pretty crazy. But this is a very useful and instructive YouTube clip by the author of this best-selling book on trauma. And it really is going to pose the question, if trauma is mostly stored in your body, then why is this gold standard cognitive behavioral therapy working on your logical brain if that's not where the trauma is? Pretty good question. So, by the way, I work on trauma in your body because that's where it freaking is. So that's why I'm showing this, to kind of educate you guys away from this whole mainstream ideology of how the mainstream thinks things work. They have a lot of correct data, but it's incomplete. It's so incomplete what they do. So this is going to kind of round things out and point you guys more in the proper direction of what's actually going on with your subconscious when there's trauma lodged in your subconscious. So I'll play this. I'll comment here and there, but I'm not even sure how much I'll comment because until afterwards, because this information is just so rock solid, mind-blowingly good. Here we go.
The most important thing to know is that there's a difference between trauma and stress. As I like to say to people, life sucks a good amount of the time. We all have jobs and situations that are really unpleasant. But the moment that the situation is over, it's over. The problem with trauma is that when it's over, your body continues to relive it. My name is Bessel Kolk. I'm a psychiatrist, neuroscientist, and author of the book, The Body Keeps the Score. I got interested in trauma on my first day working at the Veterans Administration. 1978 was the year, and the Vietnam War was over by about 6 or 7 years. The very first day that I met Vietnam veterans, I was just blown away. These were guys who were my age, who were clearly smart and competent and athletic, and they clearly were just a shadow of their former self. Their bodies were clearly affected by trauma, and they had a very hard time connecting with new people after the war. Around that time, a group of us started to define what trauma is. And in the definition of PTSD, we write, these people have been exposed to an extraordinary event that is outside of normal human experience. In retrospect, that shows us how ignorant and narrow-minded we were, because it turned out that this is not an unusual experience at all. People usually think about the military when they talk about trauma, but at least 1 out of 8 kids in America witness physical violence between their parents.
That's just physical violence. 1 out of 8 kids. There's many other types of trauma. Here we keep going. People who are stuck in life, we're diving down the rabbit hole to show you guys why. And there are some red pill coaches who say, you just gotta do the work. Why can't you do the work? Are you a pussy? Are you a loser? Well, they don't understand this. This is actually really quite common. They're just talking about 1 out of 8 kids witness domestic violence. They're not talking about all the other stuff that also traumatizes people. This is why a lot of people are stuck. This is what you have to resolve before you can do the work to up level in life. Yeah, you got to do the work too. But for those who self-sabotage, who can't seem to do it, who are just fighting this uphill battle, can't get over the hump, struggling with all sorts of things, procrastination, anxiety, this is the root of why. And it's way more common than people realize.
A larger number of kids get beaten very hard by their own caregivers. A very large number of people in general, but women in particular, have sexual experiences that were clearly unwanted and that left them confused and enraged. So, unlike what we first thought, trauma is actually extremely common.
Extremely common. He's not just taught. And with my upbringing, I had agoraphobia, general anxiety disorder, manic depression, and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I didn't go to war, but that's what happens. Trauma doesn't just come from war, and it's actually very, very, very common. If someone is a life coach or is trying to help men, women, whatever, up level, if they don't understand this, then they are impaired in their ability to help others. If they don't acknowledge this, if they don't understand how trauma works, they are impaired in their ability to help others who have trauma, which honestly, to some degree, at least mildly, it's about 90%. I'm not saying 90% severe. I'm saying 90% have some sort of trauma holding them back in some way, subconscious emotional trauma. If a life coach, psychologist, whatever, psychologists understand this. If a life coach, anyone trying to help people up level doesn't understand this, then their skill set is incomplete. And they are impaired in their ability to help others. This is so common. You absolutely must understand these concepts if you're helping others. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do a great job.
There's a lot of debate of what a trauma is to this day.
And that's most life coaches. They don't understand this. A lot do, but majority doesn't.
But basically, trauma is something that happens to you that makes you so upset that it overwhelms you. There is nothing you can do to stave off the inevitable. You basically collapse in a state of confusion, maybe rage, because you are unable to function in the face of this particular threat. But the trauma is not the event that happens. The trauma is how you respond to it.
Boom. And what I say is, he says the trauma is your response. It's really two things. It's your interpretation of what happened and what it means. It's the narrative you get in you. And then it's the emotional trauma tied to that belief, that narrative, that interpretation that forms from the event. You really got to clear both. You got to fix the narrative. I'm not safe. I'm not good enough. Because this thing happened, I'm a loser. I'm a failure, or I'm not safe, or what I can't get. I'm hopeless. I have to, there's no hope. Whatever it is, you got to fix that, as well as the traumatic trapped emotion that's trapped in your body. That's really what trauma is. A painful narrative with painful emotion trapped in your body. It can be trapped in specific parts of your body. When I help clients, I'm like, where do you feel this in your body? Well, why is it there? Well, we'll play more of this, but basically there's neurons throughout your body. This is neuroscience. There's neurons on your heart. There's a ton of neurons in your gut. There's just as many neurons processing data in your torso as there are in your brain. Think about that. It's processing emotion, holding emotion, trapped traumatic emotion with these bad narratives stored in your body. That's the whole point of this book. Your body keeps the score. Your body remembers the trauma. Those neurons, that's where trauma is usually stored. It can be up in your brain too. I'm not saying your brain's not unaffected by trauma. It is. But we'll keep going.
One of the largest mitigating factors against getting traumatized is who is there for you at that particular time. When, as a kid, you get bitten by a dog, it's really very scary and very nasty. But if your parents pick you up and say, "Oh, I see that you're really in bad shape, let me help you," that dog bite doesn't become a big issue, because the foundation of your safety has not been destroyed.
Okay, now what happens if a child grows up and no one is on his side, if no one has his back? His One parent ignores him, the other abuses him, he's bullied at school. I have had clients come to me, like I had one client come to me, and he looked like a GQ model. I mean, he had a 6-figure job. He was 6 feet tall, maybe a little taller, looked like a GQ model, and just had a lot of insecurities about women. And it's like, why? It's like, man, he's like a 9 out of 10 easy, you know, was trauma. Had no one on his side, no one to be there for him as a child. And that's actually quite common. If someone grows up in a dysfunctional family, it's kind of maybe 30%. It's one parent and the other's like nice or helpful to the child, and the other's like abusive or dysfunctional. Those kids have trauma, but it's not nearly as bad as the other, say 60-70%, where both parents are dysfunctional, not able to help them, traumatizing the child, and the child just feels like, I don't have anyone on my side at home. And that's a foundation. If you don't have that, that's when you really start seeing some severe childhood trauma, people really struggling. When you guys walk around in the world, you see people on the outside, you have no idea what they've been through. You have no idea what they've been through. So when you see someone really struggling and you're like, oh, this person's a loser, this person's, you know, why doesn't he get his act together? Please understand, you haven't seen their story. You haven't seen their story. This video is explaining why so many people are stuck and why they can't just do the work, you know, like some of these ignorant red pill coaches say, who are not, you know, life coaches in general. And I'm not saying all red pill coaches are like this. There are some that are very aware of this, but the ones who just can't understand why guys can't just get over it and move forward, and they start calling them losers and whatnot. It's like, you guys are so ignorant. So this is why we shouldn't judge others. We don't know what they've been through. And this stuff really, really messes you up. You can't just wave a magic wand and say, oh, I'm going to believe differently. Like Alex Hormozy says, oh, okay, I'm just going to say, screw this trauma, and then I'm going to move forward. If you watch one of my very first shows, Alex Hormozy talks about trauma, and he's just so freaking wrong about it. Alex Hormozy, by the way, by around age 29 or 30, 31, became worth $100 million. Took him like 5 to 7 years. I love his channel, but he's one of my earlier shows, just like 2 weeks ago, if you guys want to go back and watch it, just a primary example of the ignorance out there about this topic. We'll keep going.
We are profoundly interdependent.
This is why you don't judge others. Here we go.
And the people. And as long as our relationships are intact, by and large, we're pretty good with trauma. It's a subjective experience, and what may be traumatic for you may not be traumatic for me, depending on our personality and our prior experiences. The problem with trauma is that it starts off with something that happens to us, but that's not where it stops, because it changes your brain. Much of the imprint of trauma is in that very primitive survival part of your brain that I like to call the cockroach brain. There's a part of you that just picks up what's dangerous and what's safe. And when you're traumatized, that little part of your brain, which is usually very quiet, continues to just send messages.
And this ties into your fight or flight, by the way. Anxiety is tied into flight. People who have chronic anxiety, this is tied into it.
I'm in danger. I'm not safe. That event itself is over, but you continue to react to things as if you're in danger. We're talking about survival. We're talking about staying alive.
This constant state of fear, anxiety that some people struggle with, I've been there. It saps your energy to an unbelievable degree. It takes so much energy to go through life, so much more energy when you're fighting this. You have this it's like you can't rest.
And so some people are into fight flight, Or on a more primitive level, people's brain shuts down and they collapse. You have these automatic responses that are not a product of your cognitive assessment. They're a product of your animal brain trying to stay alive in the face of something that part of your brain interprets as a life threat. And the problem then becomes that you are not able to engage or to learn or to see other people's point of view or to coordinate your feelings with your thinking. Traumatized people have a tremendous problem experiencing pleasure and joy. But the core issue is our hormones and our physiological impulses that have to do with survival. Your body keeps mobilizing itself to fight. You have all kinds of immunological abnormalities, endocrine abnormalities, and that really devastates your physical health also. Oftentimes, the physical problems are longer lasting than the mental problems. And the other thing that is terribly important is the impact of poverty, or the impact of racism, or the impact of unemployment. There's other societies that are much more trauma savvy than we are, where there is not an enormous amount of income inequality. Healthcare is universal, childcare is universal. A culture like that really looks at what are the antecedents for certain forms of pathology.
And that's one of the big issues in our society is people, they don't look at the root cause of what's really going on.
So the big issue is a political issue. How do we rearrange our society to really know about trauma so that people who grow up under extreme adverse conditions can become full-fledged members of society? The sense of community and people being there for each other is a critical part of surviving and thriving.
Get smarter faster.
Okay, so that's it. So tomorrow I'm going to show another clip on how that goes more into how trauma, subconscious trauma, affects us. Trauma is not just from, there are things that traumatize people that you may not even think is trauma. Someone's constantly criticized growing up. Man, I wish I had the book. There is a, I think it was by Patrick Carnes. He's an author known for sex addiction books. Anyways, I was reading through one of his books, I don't know, 15 years ago. And it mentioned how someone can be traumatized by a major event, such as getting in a car wreck and almost dying, or, you know, some really severe abuse, even one time, or being attacked and, you know, almost dying or something like that. They can be a person can be traumatized by that one event, but they can be just as traumatized by 1,000 small events. So if you're constantly criticized growing up, constantly shamed, constantly judged, if you grow up just being ignored, just you know, Marilyn Monroe, when she was put in an orphanage as a young child, and she would cry in her crib for hours and hours and hours, and like the other kids, and no one would come for her. And that just completely messed up her life. So, and it was an ongoing daily trauma for her. If, you know, if she was stuck in her crib for one day and then the rest of the time her parents were around, she probably would have, I mean, she would have most likely turned out more or less okay. But day after day after day, criticism after criticism, being bullied, you know, tons of little, very frequent little traumas can traumatize someone just as much as seeing combat and war, being sexually abused, being, you know, attacked and almost dying or being injured. The big traumas, guess what? Small traumas can add up and actually traumatize people just as bad. So we're going to watch another clip probably tomorrow, very soon, that goes into more on how trauma connects us. But the thing I want to communicate to you guys, number one, is some people actually don't even realize people struggle with this, but it's actually very, very common. So when you see people struggling, don't just assume that they're losers and can't get their act together. There's usually a reason why. Number two, everything in us is connected. Trauma affects our brain, but it actually affects our body, the nerves and neurons in our body, painful emotions, painful beliefs stored in our body. You know, you can Google our second brain and find out that, wow, we have a second brain in our gut. It's actually processing data. So if there is a methodology that's trying to help people and it only focuses up here, should you focus up here? Yes, absolutely you should. I focus up here, the brain. But you also need to focus on this, not just cognitive mind, subconscious mind, where stuff is in your body. What I do is I find bad, painful, subconscious beliefs. We bring it to the surface. My sessions are 5 or 6 hours. The reason they're that long is I'm spending that much time finding subconscious trauma, and then like a surgeon going in hypnosis, bringing it up, sending it away forever, and watch the testimonials. Just watch all these testimonials. I'm changing lives all the time. 1, 2, 3 sessions, people's lives completely change all the time. Pretty much any show where you see me and one other person, it's like 95% chance that person was a client giving a testimonial. So just go through my channel, look for them. It's just everywhere. The reason I quit my high-paying job, I had a job making almost $200,000 a year. It's gone. I'm doing this because this methodology is so powerful, and there's so much ignorance in our community. So many people are suffering. Subconscious trauma has such a profound impact, and there's so many people completely ignorant of it, and the people that are aware of it, most of them are using just very inefficient techniques. So yesterday, on my YouTube channel, I showed all these studies, and one of the, kind of pointing out how marginally effective at best, for the most part. I mean, I'm talking about the mental health system. For the most part, it's pretty marginally effective. I think there are some people that are very much helped by our mental health system, talk therapy, CBT. So I'm not saying that it's not the case, but there was one study I pointed out yesterday where they admitted in this study that the gold standard of psychotherapy, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, at best, at most, helps 50% of those with only mild to moderate depression, at most. The other 50%, it doesn't help them at all. And among those 50%, it doesn't mean it gets them all the way better. It means it at least helps them a little. That's unacceptable. That's just, why do they call that the gold standard? That's terrible. I'm doing this now. And I don't take the angle of, okay, I'm going to cure your schizoaffectoid disorder. I'm not diagnosing medical issues. I'm not giving medical advice. What I'm doing is I find in people their beliefs that they're not good enough, their beliefs that they can't get what they want, that it's hopeless, that they're not safe, that they have trapped anger and rage because they've been treated unfairly, unjustly, they've been abused, etc. And so they're angry at the world. Maybe they're angry at themselves because they say it's my fault that I'm failing in life. And these people don't even understand that, well, you're failing in life because you've had trauma and that's really messing you up. And so come on, give yourself a break, man. And then let's fix this trauma. But when I go in and I fix these painful emotions tied to false beliefs, boom, very quickly, people can just start turning their life around. And this is really the core thing that I do. So I get these bad beliefs tied to trauma and the painful emotions themselves out, put in unconditional self-love, self-approval, belief in your ability and value, get rid of any anger, anything else in there. Then people just take off. And you see it time and time and time again. I've done it hundreds of times for hundreds of people. Trauma is if someone doesn't understand this, they shouldn't even be, I mean, they're just not going to be that effective at helping others. So, very important topic. And that is more or less the show for today. I am tomorrow going to do another clip on trauma to dive in even deeper into what the effects are, what the health effects are. Really, everything's tied together. So, guys, you got to take care of your health with nutrition and exercise. You know, you got to clear your subconscious trauma. You know, cognitive behavioral therapy, even though it's only effective 50% of the time at most, it is still a tool that should be used. You know, work on this, work on your health, nutrition, get a tribe of people who support you. If they don't, get rid of them. If they're not net benefiting your life, get a mentor. It all adds up to help you out. But the thing that is most ignored is, and that is honestly most important, is subconscious trauma. This is dealt with less than anything else. People will get their nutrition in shape. They'll go to the gym. They'll, you know, they'll get a new set of friends. You know, they'll go to a therapist who does cognitive behavioral therapy. And then they never take care of their trauma, and they wonder why they can't get ahead and why they're stuck. We do have some comments here. Mention human trauma is like, yeah, I'll talk about the onion layer for layer. Okay. So here's what happens. And guys, I've done this all on myself. So I'm intimately aware of the process because I've healed myself with this process. So what happens is people come to me and they're struggling, and we take care of the biggest struggles first. And that's the cool thing, is the stuff you're suffering from the most, we get first. Oftentimes one session, not all the time, but probably the majority of time, the worst thing you're struggling with will get 60 to 100% gone one session. I usually work 2 to 4 things one session. So let's say you finish with a session and you say, oh my goodness, this thing I've struggled with for years. You see this in my interviews. Watch the Ryan Apollo interview. And he's like, this thing I struggled with for years, and all of a sudden it's gone. And so let's say that happens to you, and you're like, wow, I had this massive anxiety or whatever it was, and it's gone. Oh my goodness, this is so great. And then after a while, you're going to be living life. And maybe a week later, maybe a month later, maybe 2, 3, 4 months later, you say, you know what? That thing I was struggling with is gone. That's awesome. Here's this other thing I'm struggling with. And the new thing, what you're struggling with, this new thing is not new. It's been there all along, but the more pain it was not as important to you because you were struggling with something more painful, or the more painful struggle kind of covered up the less painful one. So the more painful one's gone. Now you're saying, here's something I'm struggling with. Well, you can use the same process. People who come to me, I teach them self-hypnosis. You watch the Dan Molina interview. He says, I cleared 15 to 20 bad subconscious programs on my own with self-hypnosis audios Ryan gave me. You watch the Brandon S interview on my YouTube channel. He talks about self-hypnosis. He cleared like 7 bad programs on his own. The Ryan A interview, he cleared approach anxiety on his own. The Jorge Diaz interview cleared, he had a lot of anxiety about closing sales and getting rejected. 9 out of 10, self-hypnosis gone. Boom, approach anxiety with women. 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, boom, gone. So this is layers of the onion. Let's say you clear the second issue. And then after a while, you say, you know what? Here's a third thing. It's not as bad as the other 2, but I'm struggling with it. So each one is you're peeling back a layer of the onion. The layer you peel back is gone forever, typically. There's a smaller one underneath. Each layer you peel back, you're just up-leveling more and more. And what happens is, I don't just want people to come to me and do one session, and yeah, I fix some big stuff, but there's going to be several layers of the onion to peel back for anyone. Each new layer is typically not as severe. It's been there all along. It's been in your subconscious all along. Each new one is typically not as severe as the one before. Like, I probably have I could say maybe 2 or 3 layers in the onion in me that I need to peel back, but they're like 2 out of 10. I mean, I'll eventually get around to them. But I started out with 10 out of 10 stuff, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10, just kept peeling stuff back. Each time you do it, life gets better and better. I mean, you can up level, you can just keep up leveling. And we're not just getting trauma out, but the cool thing about hypnosis that psychedelics doesn't do, and I don't think EMDR can do it either, is you don't just get rid of bad, painful, traumatic subconscious beliefs, but then you put in the best beliefs to replace them. And that's how you up level. You get rid of the bad and you put the best beliefs in. And you guys will hear me say stuff like there's no greatness without adversity. Failure does not affect my value. Failure is just practicing, learning, and growing. Those who succeed the most first fail the most because they try the most and they try the hardest things. The more I do anything, the better I get until I have enough skill to get anything I want. These are actually good programs, good programs that I put in people to replace the bad or traumatic ones. So within a couple years of me doing hypnosis on myself, boom, income doubled. And then a few years later, it's probably more like 7 years later, boom, income doubled again. The income doubled again when I literally in my core felt that I could first double my income. And then it just happened. I was like, holy crap. I felt this in me, in my core, and then it happened. So when you up level, after I cleared my depression, I had general anxiety, just feeling anxiety all the time. Fix that with self-hypnosis. It took me a while to figure that out because the first healing program I came across, Melanie Tonya Evans, her program was great, but it didn't really explain how to use her program to clear anxiety. It took me 2 years to figure it out. Then when I figured it out, boom, anxiety gone. Then I started dating again because I was actually kind of mostly MGTOW for, 3 years or so. And I was mostly MGTOW because for me, it was like, well, before I cleared my trauma, I date women because I needed validation. Beta male thirst, chasing validation. If this woman likes me, then it means I'm good enough. And so I would date to try and find a girl who would just like me, love me, believe in me so I could believe myself. That's actually codependency. If you don't know how to love yourself, if you need others for validation and approval, you're codependent on them. So I cleared my stuff and I said, hey, why do I even need women if I don't need them for validation? I can give it to myself. So I went, MGTOW for mostly MGTOW for 2-3 years. Well, guess what? When I decided to start dating again, whole new layers of onions came up. Oh my goodness, here's all these insecurities that because I wasn't dating women, they weren't being exposed. 3-4 layers of the onions there came from dating women. And, that's actually what women are good for. They're good at exposing your insecurities. That's once you're aware of these insecurities with these self-hypnosis, hypnosis, etc., you can actually, now that you're aware of them, go inside and remove them. And I did. And then success with women just, massively better, doing way better in general. So each layer of the onion you peel back, your life just gets better and your life gets better and your life gets better. And each one you're up leveling, things are permanently gone, but you do have these to go through. Can issues arise during the process? Yeah. So the more you go inside and find bad subconscious beliefs, a lot of people know that they struggle. They're like, oh, I'm struggling here, I'm struggling there, but they don't really go inside and find the trauma that is at the root of the struggle. Well, the more you do hypnosis, self-hypnosis, again, someone comes to me, for a session, I give them 3 self-hypnosis audios and I show them how to use it. That's why it's a 5-6 hour session. I'm training them to use this stuff on themselves in addition to doing a session. And then I show them self-talk, life coaching, whatever they need, trying to be as comprehensive as possible. So the more you go inside with hypnosis and self-hypnosis, you're not only clearing stuff out, but you're building a greater connection to what's inside you, a greater awareness to what's inside you. So the more you do this, the more aware you become, and the more you say, oh, I struggle in this area because I have this issue inside of me. And then once you build that awareness, you have these tools to go in and remove it. And I probably have removed 36 bad subconscious programs out of me. The more you dive in, the more you become aware. And then the more you can clear. It is a process. I mean, within 2 months of doing this, my manic depression I struggled with for decades was gone. Then I went on to anxiety and insecurities with all that other stuff. Let's see. Okay, so this is a great question by Spark. What's with people's mentalities that go through severe conditions, yet they still succeed? What do you think they're doing that most are not? Okay, so my ebook that is coming out on how the subconscious mind works, it has a chapter on this. It's the 3 motivational archetypes. So the first one is what typically happens with trauma for most people, not all, is it makes people shut down to some degree, meaning the world's dangerous, so I got to play it safe. I can't take risks. If I take risks and fail, I'm a loser. I'm a failure because I failed. So I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to get a safe job. I'm going to stay small. These people live, kind of mediocre lives, because if you don't take risks, you don't learn and grow. You don't up level. And so playing it safe means you're going to have a pretty average, mediocre life. But there is another response to trauma, and that is people have trauma in them and they say, I'm in pain right now. I'm in emotional pain right now. Trauma causes more toxic shame than not feeling safe. It can cause, I don't feel safe, but more often than not, it tends to be, I'm not good enough. I can't get what I want. It's hopeless. I don't fit in, etc. So when you get this trauma, another way to react instead of staying safe is people say, I feel terrible right now. I feel not good enough. But you know what? If I become super successful, then I'll be good enough. Then I'll love myself. Then everyone will love me because I've proven that I'll be successful. This is, it's kind of what I call dirty fuel, meaning their toxic shame is motivating them to be successful, so they'll no longer feel the toxic shame. That's the narrative they have. In the worst case scenarios, this is Kurt Cobain, Marilyn Monroe, Robin Williams. They struggle with depression their whole life, but they're super driven to succeed. But then they get the success. They don't realize that outside success does not heal subconscious trauma. It does not change your subconscious programs. So some people become super successful and they're miserable. So can people go through severe conditions? Yeah, see, different people interpret things different ways. And this video talks about one person can go through one event and be traumatized, and another person can go through it and be okay. It's because based on your upbringing and maybe just who you are, you're just, overall makeup, one person will interpret things one way and one will interpret another way. So some people interpret things a way that keeps them small so that they can stay safe, and now they're held back. They can't get ahead. They have all this anxiety and everything that keeps them from moving forward, up leveling, even if they want to, even if they consciously want to. They're like, I'm sick and tired of working at McDonald's. I want to do better, but they can't. So that's how trauma affects them. Other people, hey, I'm going to prove myself. Then I won't feel like crap anymore. But then when they prove themselves and they become successful, they still feel like crap because it's not outside stuff that makes them feel better. That will not fix a bad subconscious program. It's getting great success, if you have toxic shame in you, at best helps you temporarily. And then you go right back to feeling like crap. In the most extreme examples, you become a Kurt Cobain who ends up ending his life, Marilyn Monroe, etc. So whether trauma makes you stay small or motivates you to great success, it's still messing you up massively. So yeah, Tim Costello, great question. I agree. That's a great question. So I had to answer it. Physiognomy. Honestly, I'm not sure what that word is. I will have to look it up. Hey, Jesper, if you have trauma, there are solutions, my man. And then my good friend, Brent Caldwell. Brent Caldwell used to have a lot of trauma, and he was on my show not too long ago. I think he was last Saturday, and the Saturday before I interviewed him, he shared his story, how he had trauma, how he got it out, And after 3 sessions, you know, he went from couldn't hold down a job to 6 figures, you know, and just loving life and just doing great. And that's my old Porsche in his photos. So I got to claim credit for that, but I sold it. I don't even have a car now, but Mexico City is great. I don't want to drive in Mexico City. So thanks, guys. I'm still learning and growing on this show. So I'm getting in the habit of responding to comments. Just hang in there with me while I get to them. But I will do you put a comment in with a question, I'll do my best to answer it. And also, thanks, Jesper. Yeah, it is extremely interesting. I've devoted my life to this. So you guys got to understand this concept. And if you don't understand the concept of trauma and how it really affects you, then you're either going to be judging others who can't up level in life, not understanding why, or you're not going to understand why you can't. And that's an issue. I mean, you'll never move beyond your trauma unless you start with awareness, because you're going to try out all these solutions that are not the real solution because they're not fixing your trauma. You got to go inside and fix it. It's not external stuff. When I'm successful, then I won't have, won't struggle inside. Nope, doesn't work. That's been proven time and time and time again. So that is our show today. Probably tomorrow, we're going to have another clip on trauma, giving more insight into how it affects your body, how it can actually physically make you sick. Everything's connected. Your brain's connected, your emotions are connected, your intuition's connected, your instincts connected, your health is connected, your body's connected. It's all connected together. So ultimately, you want to address everything, but subconscious, what people ignore the most, and it is the root where all trauma is stored. So you got to go in there and you got to work on the emotions in your body. You don't use your logical brain to fix pain, emotional pain stored in your body. 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, your cognitive brain works. You can do, 9 times 9 = 81. Great, your cognitive brain works. That's not the problem. So trying to use your cognitive brain to then fix trauma in you, it's at best, it's very inefficient, or it doesn't work at all. So that's our show for today, guys. And I appreciate all your comments. I'll always do my best to respond and answer anything you bring up. Stay tuned. Come back tomorrow. We got more good stuff for you. Explaining things that are very important and very misunderstood. And so that's what I had for today. And just remember, guys, you have more power than you know.